There. So we are recording this session. Nobody else is talking but Tim and I, but if you don't like being on sessions that's recorded, you can drop off now. And this is, again, the Power Systems Virtual User Group for November. So a couple of things before we get started. First of all, the presentation materials, there aren't a lot of them because most of this is going to be a demo, which is great. But the presentation materials that we're going to start off with are out on the wiki, and I can throw a link to the wiki. It's in all the emails that I send out, but I'll throw a link out there anyway. Also, there's two panes. There's a chat pane and a Q&A pane. It's easier for us if we only have to monitor one for questions. So if you have questions, if you, for like Tim or I or something, you put them in the Q&A pane, that's easier. Chat all you want in the chat pane. Probably we'll look at it, but if you have questions for us, really it's easier just to put them in the Q&A pane. So today we're talking about IBM Navigator for IBM I. So this is kind of an IBM I webinar, which is a little bit different. Normally we're kind of generic power systems, so this is specific to IBM I, which is okay. Last time we did AIX 7.3, so we kind of bounce around a little bit. So let me introduce Tim Rowe. Tim is going to be our presenter today. Tim is a business architect, and he's responsible for the application development systems management for the IBM I operating system. His responsibilities include making sure that the IBM I has what it's needed to be successful as an operating system, both today and into the future. So Tim, I'm sure, is working with the offering managers and all of that to push things in there that are requested. You heard us talking about a little bit about LUG, and I'm sure he gets lots of feedback from LUG as well. Tim spends much of his time helping customers understand what's possible on the platform for IBM I and when it comes to modernization. And as you might have heard us if you got on early enough, he also spends a lot of his free time reffing soccer with his son that's still involved in it. So Tim's here to talk with us, and he's got his first slide up, so he's all set to go there. So with that, Tim, I'll hand it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Joe. Appreciate that. And as I go through this, just to reiterate, I like to make these as interactive as possible. Obviously, you can't verbally speak at me, which is fine, but do please enter any questions, items that you want to discuss, things that directions that you want me to go, put them in the Q&A. I've just got a handful of slides, so like 5 or 6 slides, and then I'm planning to spend most of the time doing live demo with these things. So just because it's a lot more fun that way. So let's dive into this Navigator thing. So first off, the Navigator, we've had a web-based interface for quite some time. This is the current view that we have of it today. If we take a look at its history, though, this interface started really back in 1995, and that's where our Navigator got its roots. It was based out of the old Access for Windows PC client. That guy, right, was a Java-based program primarily, and leveraged things like Java Swing as the UI componentry. Well, in the 2007 timeframe, we started a little bit of a web process, but then 2008 is when we really delivered the first real web interface. But that web interface was not like we went and completely reinvented anything. We took the old PC support, we ripped off the Java Swing components and added in HTML-based components. So that would be one of the things about that interface, that it was kind of shoehorned into the world of the web. In 2013, we made a fairly significant upgrade where we leveraged some of the more modern components like Dojo to improve the performance of the tables within that web interface. Primarily since 2013, we really haven't done a whole lot for a number of reasons, and we'll cover a few of those as we kind of go through. So that's kind of the evolution of this interface. And in many respects, it's I kind of think what we've done in the past to what we've done now kind of falls into a little bit of this analogy, right? If you think about back in the early 1900s, Ford came out with the F-150 pickup truck. It was a gas engine, wheels, bed, basic pickup truck. It was recognizable as a pickup truck, and over the years they've updated it, right? They've put in the same gas combustion engine. Sure, they've probably made improvements to it from year to year, but by and large, it was the same entity, just refreshed until last year, where they came out with kind of a real radically new concept, right? A fully electric pickup truck, where yeah, it all looks like a pickup truck, but you know, everything under the covers was really completely redone and reinvented. And with Navigator, we've largely done a similar kind of transformation with this new interface. There's a lot of things here that you'd recognize and say, yeah, that came from the old Navigator interfaces, whatever they may have been. But as we kind of go through this, you'll see that we really took a very new and different approach to um, how we went about doing Navigator, both from a UI presentation perspective as well as how we accessed and leveraged the data itself. So let's dive into a little bit of the why we had to move on with things. So old nav, it was functional, right? But it was definitely ugly. I can definitely say that it's my baby. I'm allowed to call my baby ugly. Um, the interface was largely designed to be a single node entity. You brought up a web browser and you went and managed that specific system. Yeah, you could, using set target system, change to go to a different system for your data, but it was really clunky. It was difficult to do. Um, so it wasn't very convenient for anybody who had multiple systems that they were interested in managing and monitoring. And when you think about monitoring, the monitoring capabilities that were part of the old Navigator were relatively, minimal. There was things like our system monitor, message monitors that were there, but each of those were largely single system entities, and it wasn't a lot of ability to do much beyond that. The technology that was used for the web, that was very ancient web technology. Uh, in my opinion, the day we delivered it, it was already ancient web technology. But that's a separate conversation, which then lended itself to be fairly slow and not very usable. And part of that was the fact that a lot of the data and the UI presentation was all passed back and forth on every connection. So it's just a lot of noise going back and forth. So it kind of really added to that performance and usability issues along the way. But I will say the old web navigator was very, very rich in function. There's a lot of stuff in there. So it was time to reinvent this thing. Um, we really needed to take a fresh look. And a lot of that fresh look came from um, things that we were given comments, recommendations by our user community. They wanted to be able to have a single pane of glass to be able to access, manage, and monitor many of the IBMI nodes that they have, actually all of their IBMI nodes they have in their shop. They want to be able to have that one place to go. Um, they wanted to be able to have improved monitoring capabilities, to be able to have a single graph that maybe looks at and leverages many endpoints to go gather its data. So as we started to look at delivering this new navigator, we had to look, basically start at ground zero. What was the web-based technologies that we wanted to use? And we reviewed a lot of the different, actually all of the different options that were available. And we determined that Angular was probably the best solution for what we were trying to do. So All of our new web interfaces are all built using Angular. And then we wanted to go rethink how we got the data that we were displaying. Now, in the old Navigator, and for years, we've primarily been tied very tightly to Java Toolbox, CL commands, and system APIs. Well, over the past 5-6 years now, if you've heard Scott Forsty and I at any point in time, we've talked a lot about IBMI services. And that's been a very key strategic change of direction for us. And it's not that we don't create new CL programs per se or new system APIs, but we really do try to focus on delivering content, delivering data for your IBMI via these services because they provide significant performance improvement. And then you can also leverage the power of that SQL engine to do your data filtering, data sorting, and a lot of other things. So it provides a fascinating platform. And so that's what we've primarily built. The entire backend data engine for this new Navigator is all built on top of these SQL services. Okay. It did deliver on September 30th. So the new Navigator is now out in the wild. It was delivered with the latest HTTP PTF group for 7.3 and 7.4. So it is out, it is available. You can go to our documentation support page, learn more gory details about it, as well as many of the things that we'll cover as we kind of go through this live demo here. Couple things to note. We didn't deliver everything. If you look at all of the function that's in old nav, we didn't deliver all that function in new nav. We delivered a lot of it, but we will, over the next couple months, be releasing regular updates to add new function. So, for example, our first PTF after GA just was approved this morning. So we have our second delivery of new nav is already out. Like I said, it was just approved today. Okay, let's go play because it's more fun. So I've already signed in, but if I were to go to a new Navigator screen, I would have a normal sign-on screen. The URL for this is port 2002/Navigator. You don't need the login part, that's additional, but yeah, Navigator is all you need. And you would then sign in with your IBMI user ID and password, right? I've signed on. Basically, this is Commons North America's system that we use for our common meetings. So Navigator is running here, but I also have it running here on this particular system, this UT25 here in the lab. Now, we created a dashboard. From this dashboard, you can add any endpoint system. So there's a couple questions. One question that I want to answer right now: do you have the PTF numbers available? Yeah. Go to get the latest HTTP PTF group. We don't want you to load individual PTFs. There's some additional PTFs that you need for some infrastructure things. So you definitely want to get the latest HTTP PTF group for both for DG1, for example. Now, with that said, the PTFs, let's just talk about that for a minute, because as you can see in my dashboard here, I've got my GUI system, right? That's this UT25 BP22 system. So if I go, draw here, this system here, this is my system that I'm running the GUI from, as you can see up here. right? That's this guy. So this guy here, I have the latest PTFs on, which is why I have this interface. But as you saw, because I clicked over here, I also happen to have the PTFs on Common One. But these other systems, Sync6, this guy, Waco, Stev9, none of these have the HTTP PTFs on them. They also don't need to be on here because we're not using any of the web interfaces to access information on this system. Matter of fact, if you were to look at how this is set up, if we dive into this just a little bit, if I go work with this particular UT25 system, if I were to go look at, let's go active jobs for a second, and I were to go look at the admin jobs, yeah, some days you can't win for trying. You may have noticed this system is starting to climb in its CPU usage. When it does that, it just bogs down my system terribly. So very annoying. So let me just kind of go hop over to this system for a little bit. We'll go back and forth between a couple of them. So admin one, this guy here is the system that the GUI is running on. But that's the system that is being used to create this GUI interface, not to connect and grab data from it. So for example, when I access Common One from this interface here, the admin one server is not called. We don't use it there. We're using the SQL services and coming through the host servers. That's how we actually get to the data on a particular system. So like I said, you don't need to have the HTTP PTFs on all of the systems, just the system that you're running the GUI. I would recommend that you have the latest database groups on any of your endpoint systems, though, because those have the latest SQL services, and there may be some functions that we're using that you may be interested in. So you'd want to have the latest SQL services available. So question, why do Common One and these show up twice? Because I added them twice, partly because Common One, for example, here, if I look at my connection information on this, Common One has got multiple DNS locations to access it. So I can have iDev Cloud, and then this guy here, for instance, is coming in through frankandi.com. So they actually have multiple different connection avenues into Common One. I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons, and you might notice one of the other things about the connection is this little guy here, right? One of the things that we've done within NewNav that really wasn't available in the old one is the ability to connect from the GUI system to an endpoint system, in this case, Common One, securely using TLS. In the old Navigator, you could set it up to do the connections, but you could never disable the non-SSL ports for the host servers because Navigator would cough and fail and not work right. Well, you can do that now. It works great. So you can connect purely using TLS and have everything secured. And we'll talk about how to set that up here in a minute or so, but just wanted to point out that as a one of the features that we've added and focused on when we delivered this new version of Navigator. Okay, to add a new system, it's simply go to add new node. You'll enter in your host name. You'll enter in a name that you want to use as the display name, by default, it'll be the first part of the host name. You can use IP address here. Whether or not you want to connect via non-secure or secure, and then the description. Now, user credentials. Let's talk about that for a minute. Because we have 3 different options when it comes to user credentials. And if I go to my little tooltip here, my little wrench, there's a tab for connection properties. And under connection properties, there's an authentication tab. This is where you determine what authentication mechanism you want to use. By default, we say use the same user ID and password that you use to sign into the GUI node with. So if you signed in with, user A and password, 123, we will then use those same values to access all of the systems that are currently registered as part of your dashboard. Now, I've got some systems that are currently not up and active, for example, or I have my authentication information has gone and expired on these systems, for example. So the second mechanism is prompting. So if I were to select prompt every time, what we would do is if you went to go click on one of these systems, we would then prompt you for a user ID and password to enter for that system for this session. And then we would maintain that in our session until you either signed off or the session expired after a period of time. So those are the 2 ways of fairly easily doing it. The third way, which is also wrong one, possible but not recommended, is this prompt and store it in a configuration file. So you'll enter in your user ID password. You can have a different one for each system, and we will save that user ID and password information and encrypt it in a preferences file on the GUI system only. So we have a preferences file for you, each person's individual, and we'll take and encrypt that. It's very convenient. Of course, there's the argument that it's also less secure because even though it's encrypted, you're storing a password value in a file somewhere. Okay, a couple questions to respond to. Is there a mode for view only in this new version? I'm not exactly certain what you mean by that, Stephen. The other question is TLS 1213. Yes, absolutely. Support them both. Obviously, you want to use the latest is best. Is it a common ID or a system ID? It's your IBMI user profile on the system that you're connecting to. So, in this case here, I've got my system name. The rest of the name is being resolved, which is the rch.stglabs.ibm.com, gets resolved by DNS, but it's my user ID and password that I'm signing onto with this one. Share a PDF, PowerPoint PDF, that's already done. There's a recording for this as well. Is there a native MFA feature? That's a fascinating question. MFA, multi-factor authentication. There's no native today, but there are several solutions that are available. IBM does have the Power SC product that does provide a multi-factor authentication mechanism that you can use against any IBMI user ID. Our IBM Lab Services team also provides a multi-factor authentication mechanism for doing that. If you want more information about either of those, send me an email offline, and I can get you details on those two particular MFA solutions for IBMI. So what special authorities does an IBMI profile need to run everything correctly? Everything is a really big word. You realize that, right? So if you think about what you can do in a system, right? If I'm going to work with jobs, well, then what do I need? Well, I need job control. If I want to work with spool files, well, I probably need spool control. If I want to go work with all sorts of objects on a system, well, I may need to have access to those objects. If I want to administer user IDs and passwords, so I probably need some kind of a SecAdmin capability here. So, those are all things to be thinking about when you talk about what authorities are needed, and everything. It depends on what you want to do, because we don't do anything special other than whatever user, right now you could say I'm signed on as, if I go up and draw again, I'm signed on and I'm working on Common One, and I'm signed on as Timmer. So that right there, that's my authorities. Whatever information, whatever special authorities Timmer has, that's what I now have access to on this system. Now, you may or may not have caught me changing this, but one of the features of this interface that I think is quite fun and quite fascinating is the ability to change systems that I've got in my management space. There's a little arrow tucked down here at the bottom. That guy there opens up what we call our system tray. If I hover over it, right? If I hover over it, it pops up our tray. If I then move my cursor outside of it, right, it closes. So if I hover, I can then scroll back and forth, and I can see all the systems that I have got out on my dashboard. So for example, right, I've got, what this guy decided to go do. I think I went too far with my, there's my messages. So these are all the systems that I have out on my dashboard. If I click on the little link itself, it then pops and it stays open permanently. I personally don't like to work that way. I like to keep it closed. So if I wanted to go see, in this example, I'm going to go to my objects. I want to look at my objects. I'm looking at my objects currently on Common One. I can then quickly go change and go look at my objects on Z14, BP22. And it's just as simple as that. The interface stays the same. The data and the system that I'm connecting to just changes. So I can go look at Stev9. And again, boom, I've changed. I'm getting information from a different system, but I'm still looking at this same GUI interface. Will Navigator for I eventually support single sign-on? Yes, that is our goal. That was that did not make GA1. It's on my list. There's a few other things that are ahead of that as far as delivery, but yes, that is on the list to support single sign-on from this. So any improvements on resource consumption by the admin2 jobs? So I would recommend stopping the admin2 jobs and never letting it run again. Just kill it, make it go away. We don't use admin2. Admin2 is not part of this solution at all. So the other thing that I would highly consider, right? I touched on it already, but if you look at, if I go look at active jobs, the jobs that are currently active on the system, I have got these admin jobs running, right? Admin 2, that guy there is the admin job to run the old web navigator. I personally wouldn't use it. I would use the new one. So you could end that job. Matter of fact, when we come out with our next release, that job will no longer be started by default, for example. Admin 1, you only need to have admin 1 running on the system that you're launching your GUI interface for. So I only need to have admin 1 running on this here, UT22 BP20, well, UT25 BP22. That's the only system admin 1 needs to run on. So I would never recommend running this admin 1 job on your production system, for example. I could have admin 1 running or shut off on all of these systems, and I can still manage them. And the answer to your other question, Jared, is yes, the IBM Tivoli web interfaces has been moved to a different server and is also being revamped. So those are all things that are also happening along the way. So can you bring up multiple systems at one time in the same spot? You'd have to launch into open up a new browser window. We're working, that hasn't been added yet as part of what we're doing, but we're going to be adding some stuff to allow you to easily just take a page and open it up into a new browser tab so that you can have multiple pages, and you can have multiple connections open without a problem. We just haven't delivered that as part of this initial delivery. And the dashboard be configured to display more than just CPU, system ASP, and active jobs. Today, no. It's something that we've talked about in the future, but today, this is what when putting together this particular interface, I happen to have a group of 35 individuals across 18 different entities. There was a group of business partners, people who managed systems on a day-to-day basis. That's what they did for their job. I had probably about 10 different people that managed either work management things, performance management, security management, different aspects of system management. I had a group of administrators from our large users group, companies that had anywhere from 15 to about 170 systems in their portfolio that they managed on a day-to-day basis. I had a couple of our ISVs that do hosting of large numbers of systems. We got together on a monthly basis to discuss their struggles, their needs, and try to work to provide things that made sense, at least for this initial default. And as we move forward, things that we can do to add to and make this better. So, for example, these basic metrics on the front, those were the ones that we decided that, okay, for day one, this makes sense. We'll deliver this. Will we allow you to customize it in the future? Likely, but it's not there yet today. But there are some things that you can customize, Alan, and we'll get to that in a little while. There's some fascinating customizations you can do from a metrics perspective that I think you'll find fun. Do all endpoints need to be at 7.3? Heck no. If I look at what I've got endpoints that are here that are 7.3, 7.4, and future OS releases that haven't been announced yet. So I've got all of them all on one page. And I know some of my advisors have gone and worked with 7.2 as well. I will say not everything will work in 7.2 because not every IBM i SQL service has been delivered in 7.2. So for those things that we go to manage within this system, if it's not on 7.2, well, the service isn't on 7.2, well, then obviously we can't very well go and get the information. So you'll be told, hey, this information is not available. Securing pages with HTTPS, yes, I've already covered parts of that, but let's talk through that one more time. HTTPS, there's two aspects to HTTPS. There's one is accessing the dashboard, your GUI node. That can be done. In order to do that, you need to configure admin1 for SSL. To do that, here under bookmarks, matter of fact, let me switch over to Common One for the moment. If I switch over to my bookmarks, oh shoot, that's right. I messed up my bookmarks and I never reset it. Can I reset my bookmarks yet? Restore shipped bookmarks. There we go. So now if I go to my bookmarks, I have bookmarks for web administration for I. So if I click on that guy, we're going to launch over to the web admin GUI. If I sign on to that interface, in here, if you go work with admin1, we have a wizard here called configure SSL. Just pretend it's TLS because it's TLS. Just because it's SSL, we just never change the MRI. This will go configure the admin1 server on the server that you're running your GUI on for SSL. So then you could connect to the GUI with SSL. Now, that's part one. Part two is I want to connect from GUI system to my endpoint nodes. If you want to connect to your endpoint nodes with SSL, I go under my connection properties, TLS connections. The one thing that you'll need to do now, if I go and click, OK or on here, let me go click on for Frank and I for the heck of it. We'll go validate the TLS environment. In this case, it's validated correctly. Why? Well, let me go click on a different one so you can see. You'll need to make certain that TLS is configured for your host servers. So to enable TLS, you're required to assign a certificate to the host servers. We have provided a link to documentation to show you how to go do that. Once the host servers have been configured for TLS, when you click on this on button, we're going to go get that certificate, and that certificate will then be put into this, what we call our web interface trust store. Once that certificate is in here, then we will use that when we make the connections, which is why, right, I've got a secure connection to common1.iinthecloud.com because I've already got that certificate. I put it in my web trust store, and that's what I'm using to make the connection from UT25 to Common One, and I'm doing it securely. I'm not doing it securely across Frank and I, and I'm not doing it securely across these other interfaces, but you can connect this securely with TLS from end to end. What is the dashboard refresh rate, assuming it does self-refresh? Mark, fabulous question. Under connection properties, not connection properties, but under my connection properties, I have a, let's see, there's thresholds. Oh, general talks about this. Where is the refresh rate? The refresh rate is, geez, I was expecting it to show up on this page. I'm guessing it's, hang on just a minute. Connection properties, yeah. Well, by golly, it should have been. There's a refresh rate. Properties. Wow, that was hard. I found it, Mark. Right now, my refresh rate is set to a minute, but you can change it to larger if you'd like. So there is a refresh rate, and it's auto refresh. It's on the properties page, so it is configurable. But that makes me now question why I have it there and not down here. But that's a separate conversation that I can have with my development team. So thank you for asking the question. It's a great question. Can you change the order of the nodes after adding? Oh, that's a great question. You can do it a couple of different ways. So first off, on our dashboard, I have two views, what I call my bubble view. And if I click on this again, I'm going to switch to the list view. And you may have seen under my connection properties, the first one, I can choose which view I want to make as my default. If you've got 10 or less systems, the bubble view I think is nicer. If you've got, I got some of our customers have got 100 systems. They never this bubble view is terrible for them, so they switch to the list view, and they look at it this way. As far as moving things up and down, yeah, it's pretty easy. I can. Oh, I didn't want to manage the node. On the bubble view, it's simply a matter of grabbing the block and moving it where you want. So right now, sync 6 is down, so I probably don't want that up in my main list. So let's just drop and move him down. So now that's my updated list. But sync 18 is up, so I want to be able to work with him. So let's just move him up. So there you go. I've now reordered my dashboard. Additionally, the order of the systems in your dashboard is the order that they will show in the system tray. So when I'm working with a system and I open up my system tray, that's the order that they show, is the order that they're in the dashboard. And in the list view, thought you could move. I guess I thought we could move them up and down in the list view too, but I'm not seeing. Oh, yeah. Drag and drop. Same thing. Just drag it, drop it, move it. So it's just like you'd expect from a modern interface. Drag and drop. So is it possible to load NewNav onto a 7.2 box? No. You will need to load NewNav, i.e. load the HTTP PTF groups onto a 7.3 or 7.4 box, and then you can manage that 7.2 box. But we will not be supporting this GUI interface actually running on a 7.2 box. So is the IBM Web Interface Trust Store in the DCM System Trust Store? No, it's not. And the reason for that, it's a Java Web Trust Store. So this trust store is actually a set of certificates that's saved as part of the Navigator, this NewNav preferences information. It is a fully encrypted file that we store only on your GUI management node, because that's where this web interface is running. So we have a trust store that is used for this web interface. It's also the same one we're going to use for DB2 Mirror GUI as well. So it's a shared trust store between our new modern web interfaces. Can the order be retained across logins? Oh yeah, absolutely. So the order of my systems, now that I've moved systems, this will be the order. If I sign off and sign back in, this is the order that it'll be until I change it again. So when I update system preferences, they are remembered. It also means that if I go and work with Common One, I haven't even gone into, right, our things like our table views. The table view, if I were to make changes to this table view, so for example, this column, I could care less about detailed status. So I'm going to move him out. So I can drag him. I don't care about enhanced type. So let's just move him. But a temporary storage, that's probably more interesting. So let's put him right there. I just moved that by dragging and dropping columns. This is now my permanent view. That's the view that's going to be maintained going forward. There's a little icon over here on every table, as well as this icon here. Remember this guy. Let's talk about him in a minute as well. This little ellipsoidal thing. If I go click on that, this shows me all the columns for this table. You could also move columns around by clicking on a column, and I could add it into the available columns list. You can see it changed behind me immediately. I could take current user and I could move it down, right? I can move it up. And you can see behind me, it's happening real time. If you make a mess of things and you don't like what you ended up with, there's also this reset defaults. You click on reset defaults and it goes back to what we shipped it as. And it's saved. So that will be my view regardless of the system I look at. So I've got Common One up, right? That's the system that I'm looking at. If I go to my system tray and I select, oh, let's go look at Z14, right? The view and order of the columns remains the same. It doesn't change because that's what I've chose as my default view. So again, so for example, if I move default status detailed out there, go back to Common One, right? Still the same view. That's now my permanent view. So you can do that both for how you set up individual tables across any of these many functions, or here in the dashboard. Okay, can you print or download from a list view? Some more so than others, but yes, you can. So let's talk about the dashboard here for a minute. If I go to the list view of the dashboard, there's a couple of actions that I want to point out. We have the ability to import and export. This is important for administrators, if you will. I can set up my list of systems and whether or not I want them to use encryption or not. And I can export that list of systems and then import it into another user's dashboard. Now, they're still responsible for their authentication. They're going to use their user ID and password. Authentication, they're going to still have to do that. But this list of systems, right, you can import and export that. Likewise, say I'm working with a particular system. On here, I'm on Common One. We have a concept here of favorites. Within our favorites, right, that's the list of interfaces that I've tagged to say I want to get to easily on a regular basis. Managed favorites also contains an import and export feature. This import export feature will save off these favorites, but more importantly, it will also save off any preference changes that I've made to tables. So for example, if I were to do an export of my favorites, I would then have the option to say or import to another user this particular layout of active jobs, for example. So you can import that into a user. So if you want all users to be able to see certain columns, you could set that up for them ahead of time. So a couple different features from that perspective. The printing question that's asked. We don't have it yet on every, but there are a number of tables. If you click on the actions drop down, there's a couple of options. There's export selected, export all. When we say export all, it's going to only export the in this case, the 100 entries that we've moved up into the browser. Here we have 368 entries. I'm not going to get a spreadsheet that has all 368 at this point, unless I were to move this number up to 500 and then do an export all. it's probably best to do some filtering. So if you want to look for a specific set of things, so let's say I want to find, my stuff, I'm going to do a quick filter on that, and now I can do an export of that set of data. So you can print or download, it's export on many of the tables, but not all. Any changes in how historical performance data are processed and displayed? No, not really. Under performance, we have our graph history view. So I can go pop up my graph history. That's the first time I've been in here today, so it takes an extra second to get the graphing package loaded. But the graph history support that's in NewNav is virtually the same as what was in the old version. Where can you see the version of Navigator for I? Under Homepage, About, right? It tells you the current OS release that you're running, the exact PTF levels that you're currently running at, both for the endpoint node as well as the GUI system. So in this case, I have both displayed here. If I were to go to, a different system, I would see, oh, these are all the same. I don't know what other OS releases I have out there. Oh, there's one. Current node is 7.3, for example, and the GUI node is still 7.4. Is advanced job scheduler tasks available in the new Navigator? No, it is not. That is one of the functions that has not yet been delivered. In the view list, can you resize your columns and it'll keep the sizings when you log on, log off? Yeah, of course you can. It's a great question, but based on previous incantations of things, one wouldn't expect to be able to do those kind of things. But yes, that is that's normal behavior in a modern web view. So I can take and resize these to what I want. That information is in fact then saved and retained for the future. And again, if you make a mess of things, reset defaults, and it all goes back to shipped values. Can I import a TLS certificate to have a secure? So the answer is yes, you can. If I go to my connection properties, go to TLS, go to the Web Interface Trust Store, you can import certificates in there yourself. But if you're on the nodes and you click on one of these on buttons, we will go get that certificate and import it for you. So you don't need to import it yourself. We will do that work for you, Umberto. Can this auto refresh? I guess I'm not following, Stefan. What do you mean by this auto refresh timer? So we do auto refresh all of these nodes, and it's based on that time interval that I showed you before, and it's set at the node level. So there's under my home properties, there's a auto refresh timer there. If you want to change the LPAR that runs the GUI, can I migrate everything settings? Yes, to my chosen LPAR. Yeah, absolutely you can. Again, using the on the list view versus the bubble view, actions, export. You can export all of the system information, and then you would also have to go and export for a particular system. If you wanted, there's the export managed. You can export your user preferences for that node can be exported as well. So then you can obviously then import them. Okay, who the heck is Fred? Fred is a nice, easy keyboard that runs on my next pattern that runs on my keyboard. So that's who Fred is. One of the things that we worked on delivering, heck, do I even have it in here? There was a watermarks. I don't even think we delivered the watermark support. There was the ability to create a watermark. In this case, my watermark is Fred. The idea was to try to get a better view of what system you're working on. Right now, it's sitting up here. I would have liked to have been able to say, I want Common 1 spread across this entire page, kind of like what we do for the 5250 interface for ACS, but in the time and resources that we had, we couldn't get it to work right. So Fred was the intention of an attempt at a watermark. Working with spool files. So let me go to my printer output. I mean, I don't have any output. Oh, there it is. View as PDF, you want to be able to view as text. That was one of the items that, because of the world of the web view, it was a much harder things to deliver. So we didn't add that into this particular delivery. The question is, how important is it to actually have it as text versus a PDF? I mean, a PDF is a highly usable and very normalized view mechanism in today's new world. So that's kind of one of those things, one of the reasons that we went with that for this. And yes, you can export and roll it out to other users. Can you change the host information on the node to use either DNS name or FQN? I have a system where it shows up. I have 2 nodes. Yes, you can go modify that system information on your dashboard to use different DNS names. It's just a matter of doing edit node information. You can update that to change to what you want. Support for BRMS. Now that's something that you're going to have to take up with the BRMS team. As of today, the BRMS team has not chose to support NewNav to date. It's still on the list to hopefully get to happen, but as of right now, BRMS is not part of the new Navigator either. So there's a question. We use SSL for client connectivity to the 5250 session, among other things. We normally use the DCM to import CA certificates. The import here, because we're not using the DCM store, we have to use a Java Web Trust store. So we need to get the certificate that's in DNS, in your being used by your host servers on the endpoint into this Web Trust store. So we will do that for you when we make the connection. You just need to approve it, and we'll take and do that update. So for example, let me just go here for a second to network servers, host servers. This is my list of host servers on a particular system. Let me go pick a different system for the heck of it. Oh, interesting. Something weird's happening there. But anyways, these host servers, you'll need to configure each of these to run as part, to be configured for TLS. And we put the documentation link is in the link when you go to click on this initially. If it's not been set, it's also documented out on our support pages. Edit node. Yeah, I can change the, I guess I can't change the host name. Well, that's silly. Can I do it under here? Edit node, no. Okay, so you can't edit the node information, so you can remove it and re-add it. Daniel, sorry about that. Could we? And the reason I'm guessing the reason we don't support the change is because of the preferences files that we're keeping track of for each node. Something we can look into, but otherwise, remove and re-add. But I understand what you're asking for. Many times IBM support cases only accept spool files, not PDF. I guess it's easier for their tools. Okay, that's a fair, that's a terrible reason. It means I need to go yell at the support team to support modern interfaces. But Jerry, I do understand the the request, so we'll have to look at that. Can you use the old and new nav concurrently? Yes, you can. So they both, like I say, one runs in admin 1, one runs in admin 2, so they can both be up and running together. Order of the nodes and change field width do not seem to be retained across logins. Yeah, they should be. They retain for me, so I'm not certain what you're saying, Randy. Will these SSL certificates on the Java chest store for the GUI reset when a new Java? No, they will not get reset. They're stored in a file that's part of the preferences files for the user for this particular GUI node. So the new Java group has no effect on those at all. Yes, Roman, I understand your concern about BRMS. It's on the list. Are there any changes to PDI, Alan, within NewNav? Yes and no, I guess is the best way to answer your question. No, the charts are largely the same. So if I come into my performance, I can go to investigate data. One of the things that we've tried to redo is rethink a little bit about how you access the charts and that kind of stuff. One second. I just need to grab a quick cough drop for a second. The very first time you enter PDI, there's a couple of blips that you may see. One is getting the list of collections, and the other is loading the file. Of course, why is my system suddenly going weird on me? I can always switch to a different system. The heck. There we go. Sometimes you just got to refresh, and then life is happier again. It's web interfaces. So the collection services stuff, we allow you to specify the library, your graph interval, and one or more collections before you launch to your graph. So in this example, collection services, I could check 3 different files. I can change my graph interval. Probably want to move it up versus 1 hour to 6 hours, so it's not going to be quite so busy. And I can go click on my CPU utilization and weights overview, and there we go. I'm going to get a single chart that will show the data points in 6-hour intervals across this entire time frame. So it's the 9th through the 18th. So it's a pretty broad thing. Under context, okay, so it looks like 6 hours. Let me go maybe down to 1 hour. Click on refresh, and that'll reload that set of data with different data points. So these charts are the same as, okay, when you ask, has things changed with PDI? PDI, about a year ago, we updated to use this new graphing capability versus the old iLog capabilities. So we have the new graphing capabilities, obviously, in NewNav, not the old stuff. So the changes are, well, yes and no. It's changed, but it's the same as the new stuff, not the old stuff. Under Investigate Data, you can select what type of a collection package you want to work with. If I want to work with disks or Job Watcher, we'll update the list of packages, and we also update the list of collections so that your collections match what you've selected for your packages. So to help you get the right stuff lined up, for example. You can also go look at the actual SQL that we're using to build all the data in that chart. So much of the stuff is the same. There are a few enhancements that are still yet coming in here, but largely it's very similar. Can you group the nodes? Great question. Stephen, we don't have grouping capabilities short of just manually taking your nodes and moving them into logical places. Being able to have kind of a tree view of your nodes, yep, I think that would be very useful. But again, we didn't roll that out in our first initial GA. Is there a way in Navigator to roll out IFS objects like PTF images to several systems at the same time, or other example collections of the report? So yes, understand what you're asking for, Michael. Today, the ability to push objects across to multiple systems isn't there, but we have the framework in place now to actually allow that to happen in an easy manner. So it is something that's high on my list to get delivered, but it's not there today. So that goes, same thing with moving a file from one system to another. We don't support that today, but it is something that is, actively on our list to get added into the future. Things that we do support today, users. I can copy a user. Is that going to allow me to then? I want to. So there is for user profiles, we have the ability to copy or send a user to a different system. So I could take a user profile and I could send it from this system, which is Z14, to one of the other available systems that are in my list. And I can send one or more systems in that manner. So we have that support for user profiles. But again, we don't have it on things like files or other things today. Curious question for Q&A and later. Why does the site always say not secure? And why does my company web browser treat it as if it's something from a gremlin somewhere? Yeah, well, it's because you'll need to go configure the admin1 server for TLS and connect with it using your certificate for your company. You'll load that into the admin1 server, and then you can connect with TLS, and it'll be handled in a more normal manner. So that's just some configuration and setup that you can do on your end. Is IFS integrated into NAV, or will it be? And will there be other things integrated? Network security, users groups? Yeah, so Brenda, there's answers to your questions are no, yes, 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 no, yes, no. Because you asked a bunch of questions there. So first off, users. All of the users and group support is available in Navigator, NewNav. So I can go work with users, I can go work with groups. I can do all of that kind of fun stuff today already, and life is happy. Security. We have probably the majority of security stuff is here. There's a few new fascinating things for security. Security info, for example. This is a fascinating new piece of information. it gives you a single place where you can see all of the different attributes on a system that affect security are in one location. We have this because we have an SQL service, security info, that gives us this information. So that's another thing that I said to pay attention to is this SQL button. Every system that I have in my enterprise, right? I can go click on any table, and any table that we use an SQL service to derive the information, we give you the SQL. It's all right here. I can then also go click Run SQL, and it will launch the IBM ACS Run SQL scripts interface if you, in fact, there it is, have that configured to connect and work. Now you may ask, how do you get that to work? ACS, I have ACS running on my machine. There's my friend ACS. Under Tools, there's a Navigator Requests interface. Navigator Requests is going to open up a window like such, where it lists all the systems that I have on my ACS. I need to click on one and then click on Start so that I establish a connection from my PC to the GUI interface, to that system. In this case, Common One, because that's the system that I'm working with. Once I have that interface, that link established, when I click on that SQL, that Run SQL Scripts button, it'll automatically launch my Run SQL Scripts window for me and enter in the SQL into the window magically. I'll do that all by clicking on that Run SQL Scripts button. If you are planning to configure EIM, there is the only way to configure EIM from end to end was in the old nav. It worked, I believe, on Thursdays when you stood on one foot and the moon was in the third phase of the quadrant. Okay, no, I'm kidding. It didn't work all the time. That was very difficult to make happen. We worked with a number of our security experts that do single sign-on configuration, and we completely redesigned this support. It works now. I've actually had several users that, stumbled upon it since we've delivered it, and they went, "Oh my goodness, it works. Who knew?" So anyways, that's a very good thing. So yes, security in EIM configuration is here, Brenda. Now, I still haven't finished the last part of your question, IFS. So first off, there's some IFS here, but probably not what you're looking for. If I go to my stuff, I can go see my IFS objects, right? So these are all my IFS objects. But under the file system icon, the tree view to go look at the IFS didn't make phase one. I'm hoping to get that out by spring of next year. But for the time being, I wouldn't use what's in old nav. What I would do is I would use the integrated file system support that's here in ACS until we can get it in the web view. So the plan going forward is to have the view that we have in ACS today, as well as the view that we have in, we'll have a tree view version of this in the new nav, but that's a futuristic thing. It's not something that made GA1. Okay. Along with the push PTF question in the old Navigator, you could search across all your nodes for PTFs, etc. So Stephen, the PTF support that's in new nav, we give you the ability to, it's GA1 was let's just say a bit more rudimentary. We give you the ability to view all of your PTFs, yes, but we don't have the support to load, apply, push, and all the other things that you may want to do from PTFs. You can look at the properties, you can look at the cover letters. That is a futuristic thing that we want to deliver, because I agree, some of the things that you're asking for would be really nice. And I think there's some new ways that we can do some things, if you will, better than what we did in the old Navigator to make them far more usable. And that's a futuristic item that we'll deliver. Is PowerHA supported? No. Can I see and manage cluster IASPs? IASPs will be supported at some point as well. I mean, you can do some things with IASPs in here, but by and large, the cluster support's not in here as of today either. That's another futuristic thing that we have on our list. Navigator will only be updated by HTTP PTFs or some kind of service pack. The plan, it's a PTF delivery. That's how these get delivered. The PTFs are delivered and included in the HTTP PTF groups. The individual, by and large, it's an individual PTF going forward, but for the initial delivery, for certain, there's a group of PTFs because we needed some infrastructure as well. So we typically will cut a new HTTP PTF group going forward, and those will be documented out on our support page. But if you have the latest, then you know you'll have the most current support as well. So I have enabled SSL on DCM and HTTP administration pages, which use in different ports when you enable SSL. How can you edit the bookmarks to resemble this? Currently, they launch as the default port. So I'll just go edit them, Daniel. So if I go into bookmarks and I go manage my bookmarks, I can do an edit bookmark, and you can then go do what you want. Change it to the port, HTTPS, anything you want, and away you go. If you copy a user profile to other systems, you can delete a profile. Right today, we only do copy across. We don't have a multi-system user profile management interface, although I like that idea, and that would certainly be something that we could consider adding in the future, Brenda. I like that idea a lot. This is good. You're giving me more work items. I'm happy about that. Web connections dropped for about the last 5 minutes. Let's try. Can the ports used for Navigator be customized? We have conflicting application port usage. Yes, it can be customized. You can change the port. That's done over in the Web Admin GUI interface. You can change what port usage you want to do. In the old nav, you could search. Yes, you can search in new nav too. Under search, up here at the top, a little bit different location. It's up over here now. You can still do searches. So if I wanted to do, work, I can get all of my work commands and see what's here. I can do work with license information, for example, and there's my license information. LPM or flash copy. Not exactly certain what you're asking there, but I don't think we have that kind of configuration support in here at this point today. But okay, Stephen, huge question. Can you view all of the DDM connections between your systems and LPARs? I have no idea. Partly because that's not an area that I go play with very often. I don't play in the world of networking a lot, so that might be something we may have to look at offline. You can certainly configure much of the networking support. There is more stuff that's yet to come. You can also look at your servers that are here. No, does it show any of the relationships between LPM or flash copy? No, that is not in here at this point, Stephen. That's not something that we've added. A lot of the stuff that we've added is more of the work management and some of the other system management configurations versus what you're asking for there. We've added a lot of stuff. Right? Work management has all active jobs, subsystems, pre-start jobs, active JVM jobs, output queues, memory pools, printers. We've added things like system values, software PTFs, licenses. You were never able to get the license information in the old Navigator. Today you can. iSCSI is now here as well. If we look at under system, there's some pretty good information on your system operator message queue. So you can go find all of your messages that may or may not be responded to there. History log. System status is kind of fun. We took what was in the old system status and we kind of revamped it and made it, I think, better. Gives you some general information about jobs, processors, addresses, disk, system. You can see your system serial number. Couldn't really get to that before, as well as a high-level view of what's going on from a database perspective. From memory, you can also click on this little guy and I can see what my memory pools are doing. Disk status and NVMe devices. So if I go click on NVMe, if you've got any NVMEs, I don't on this system, but on this system, I do. So I can see my NVMe devices and I see the life expectancies, the thresholds. I can see, you know, the fuel gauges, if you will, of these particular devices. Likewise, on SSDs, if you've got SSDs on a particular system, you can see the fuel gauges for those devices as well now. If you're doing anything with watches or exit programs, all stuff that wasn't available in the old Navigator is now available here in the new version of Navigator. Now, things that are here and things that are not here. Under monitors, the only monitors that we have today, this system is way behind on support, so I don't want to use that system. My bad. We have system monitors are available similar to what they were in the old Navigator. Now, we went with a complete new backend architecture and infrastructure as well. So if you have system monitors running in old Nav, they won't show up here. You'll need to go click on the Migrate Heritage Monitors. So if you have monitors that are running in old Nav, i.e. the Heritage Monitor Navigator, we will allow you to move them into this new interface as well. So this is available in the PTFs that we just approved today. So that's a new thing that was just added. Message monitors, right? You'll notice they are not here yet. That's another one of the items that was not able to be delivered as part of this initial delivery. Is there a way to bring up system values? Yeah, of course. Go to system values. There you go, system values. They're all there. Okay, Brenda, what else did you ask? PTFs, yes. Oh, comparison views across systems. That's a feature function that's part of our administration runtime expert program or solution today. We don't have that in Navigator. but Brenda, that's a really good idea. I like it. So again, thank you for adding another really good idea to my long list of ideas that we need to add. Oh yes, yes, yeah. I noticed I accidentally kicked my camera on. So yes, thanks, Stephen. Enterprise pools. No, we don't have that in here. Um, Something we could add in the future. Again, it's a long list of cool things we could add. But oh yeah, great. Thanks. Glad you like watches, Alan. Is there any discussions for implementing alerting, i.e., mail if errors occur, thresholds of those kind of things? So the answer to that question is yes, and maybe, and there's more to come. So first off, on the yes part, under monitors today, you can set thresholds on monitors. So this particular monitor, if I were to go look at the properties of it, there is a threshold that has been set. In this particular example, the threshold is just to send message. You could change that to send an email using Java Mail. That's part of the system. That capability is there today. So if you hit a threshold on one of these metrics that we've provided as part of the system monitoring capabilities, that kind of monitoring can be done. I think there's potential for adding more to this, and this is an area that is definitely in our list of things that we want to do improvements on. So I can see quite a bit more coming in that alerting capabilities. One of the areas that we're looking at adding, there's a little icon down here at the bottom that has alerts. We haven't completely fleshed out what this is going to do and how this is going to work yet, but being able to say and set certain message IDs, for example, if it occurs, flag it, make it more visible to you with some kind of an icon and a error or something down here to let you know what's going on. So again, that's an area that's still being fleshed out and not yet delivered. Just by
So
way of,
Tim, we got about a minute left.
oh my word, we're
Yeah,
running
you're
out of
doing a great
time.
job going down the questions.
Okay. So the update is ACS will be updated at some point to point to new nav. You can do it today. There's a property that you can set in ACS in the new version, so that's available. I didn't even get to any of the monitoring capabilities. So there's a custom charts view that we have in here, as well as some PDI things. I'm going to be doing another session with Jyoti has a user group and a session that I'll be doing for 90 minutes. I'm going to bring Laura Powell in, who is my lead on all things performance within Navigator. And her and I are going to dive through some more Navigator things, as well as take a deep dive into PDI and this incredible custom charts, which allow me to create custom metrics that I can add into a chart to keep track of. So, Joe, I think you have access to Jyoti's sessions as well.
Yeah, so Joy does sessions in the UK. I'm not sure what time yours is. She varies sometimes. So if she's doing a speaker from the U.S., she changes her time. Otherwise, you're like 4 in the morning for us. But she does some later ones.
So I guess it's. Go ahead. I was going to say there's an option because Brenda says, "Can there be a part 2?" Well, I guess we could either do a part 2. I'd be fine with that.
Yep. So you and I'll have to talk about that. We'll see what we can schedule in, Tim. But I'll try and let's see. Joydee's got find her website. I'll have to find her website. I can post something on the my wiki on my wiki that points to hers so that you can get a link to what she's doing there.
So one last question I want to answer. Brian asked, can we have our own SQL for different metrics? The answer is on custom charts. Yes, you can.
All right. Well, so with that, I think we're going to have to end it here just because, people start leaving and other things are scheduled. And Tim,
Absolutely.
so I appreciate this. You did a fantastic job going through the questions. Lots of questions. That's good. Just love to see the demos because I think it just shows off things so much better than just a bunch of static charts. So great job, Tim. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate all of your interaction. A lot of fun. Thank you very much.
And everybody, thanks for joining us and for hanging in for this. Wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. I'll send out some notes about the December webinar as soon as I get it set up. I'll put something in the wiki link about Joydy so you can see Tim go over some of this deeper dive into other areas of this with her. She didn't know that when she booked hers that I had sort of the same topic booked, and so her and Tim worked out a little bit different than just going over the same thing. So it will be new stuff if you want to join her session with Tim again.
So much. There's so much you can do. Lots of new sessions on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving again. Thanks again, Tim. And with that, goodbye.